What's up, guys? This commentary will be breaking down the matchup between SS4 Towa versus Red Beerus. What's up, guys? It's the new sensation, Bigger Notation here, and today I'm going to be covering the quarterfinals of the Rising Phoenix Odyssey YouTuber tournament, and I guess technically this is the semi-finals of the losers bracket. But this matchup is a very, very special one for me because I was rematched against Bancroft from Attack on Productions. And as always, I'll have a link to my opponent's YouTube channel down in the description below for you guys to check out. But I definitely want to give a big shout out to the whole Attack on Productions team because I faced Bancroft and Fluff in this tournament, and they were both really great opponents. But for those that don't know, for those that haven't been watching my arc through the Rising Phoenix event, Bancroft was actually the player who knocked me down into the losers bracket in round 2, I believe, when I was playing Sin Xeno against his OG Broly deck. So this was kind of like an anime style comeback where I've been fighting my way through the losers bracket, and I've taken out his teammate Fluff in, I think, the previous round or 2 rounds ago, and now I'm finally able to rematch against Bancroft. So it was definitely a very exciting game. I was really looking forward to this matchup, and I think he was as well, very excited for it. As with every episode of this commentary of the Rising Phoenix event, I want to give a big shout out to Rising Phoenix Odyssey, and as always I'll have the link to his channel as well in the description below. But big shout out to running these events. They're always really good fun, and I really enjoy participating in them, and it's just good publicity for the whole Dragon Ball Super YouTube community. So I'll get straight into the gameplay. For those that are interested in the SS4 Towa deck that I'm playing currently, I will have a profile uploaded within the next 2 weeks, I'd say, maybe the next week, hopefully. But it's a deck that I've been messing with for a while, but with the price of the SS3 thwarting Gogeta, I haven't been able to pick up the cards in real life yet. Like, I've only been playing the deck online. So that didn't really give me much of a motivation to properly build the deck because I couldn't play one of its most powerful cards. And so I was deciding to just leave it for a while, but then the Mythic Booster at reprints came out. And so now I've actually been able to pick up the whole deck. So I'll have a in-person profile coming to you very, very soon if you guys are interested in that. For those that enjoy the SS4 Towa deck. Because for those that have been watching my channel for a while, you'll know that I really enjoy the Ultimate Towa leader and kind of its own inbuilt archetype with the Xeno characters, as that was one of the first viewer suggested deck profiles that I had, and I ended up really loving the deck because I love rainbow decks in general. And so all of this new SS4 stuff that the deck has been able to add in has been really interesting, and I always said that this deck should be played as an aggressive deck even before the SS4 stuff came in, so I'm glad to see that my vision kind of finally came to fruition with this SS4 package that's going on. But going straight into the game, as you can see, I've just charged a blue energy and I've played the Vegeta to cycle through some of the deck. You'll probably see in the gameplay, but also in the deck profile, my version of the SS4 deck isn't a mono black version, and so it doesn't run the mono black super combos where you have to have all black energy. I am running a good few blue cards in there because I think that the power of Senzu Bean in the deck is just ridiculous, and there's also some cool potential to abuse a Janemba package that I've managed to fit in there. So that's why you can see I've been charging blue, or I charged a blue card at the start of the game because I don't need to worry about charging all black for my super combos. But looking at my opponent's plays, he's just discarded the Ape to draw 2 off of his leader effect, and he's also charged a blue-yellow, which shows to me that his deck is likely going to be a tricolor build or just a blue-red build. Sorry, he charged a blue-red, not a blue-yellow. But if he goes for tricolor, he can abuse there's a new Beerus card that came out in one of the most recent sets. I can't remember which one. I think it was set 14. But it's a blue-red 4-drop that can arrival in and minus 10k off 2 cards, which is really strong. So he might be playing that card in the deck, but so far the cards I need to watch out for are definitely going to include the Cooler arrival as well as the Boo and Hercule arrival that can minus 10k on a battle card as well. But also one of the big advantages to him being able to play tricolor or at least blue-red is that he's going to be able to have access to Senzubin, which is a really, really painful card for this deck to play against, because all of the attackers come in at 16 or 15k, and that obviously means that Senzubin is going to stop me from doing pretty much anything during my turn, as long as he's awakened, that is. So here he went to Arrival in his cooler, and I decided to then respond with an SS4 Bardock because his cooler is 20k power, so I can just counterplay it. The reason I did that was because it gives me a little bit more protection, because it means that the SS4 Vegetas are not getting minus 10k'd. But realistically, he probably wouldn't have been able to kill them unless he invested another super combo into the attacks this turn. So it wasn't really to stop the minus 10k, it was mostly just to stop him having that 20k double strike body on board, because I don't want him to have the ability to pressure my board during his turn. I don't want to give him that like autonomy during his own turn. I want him to be on the back foot throughout the whole game, because he is the control in this matchup. I'm definitely the aggressor, and so I'm going to be trying to pressure him as much as I can with these 16k crit guys, and just hitting him with standard 16k attackers as well. Just slowly trying to whittle his life away, so that before he can do some really big Arrival plays, I'm able to kind of rip his hand apart by forcing him to combo out of stuff and take a bunch of crit hits. So he's just done a very simple tap 2 for the ape and pass. Now, as you can see, my hand has got 3 copies of the Towa promo, so I decided to charge one of them, but these cards are now live during this turn because my opponent now has 2 or more energy. So I'm probably going to end up using those cards, or at least one of those cards this turn. You can't use 2 in the same turn because it's got the limit 1, but you can. I'm probably going to be using one of those this turn. And something I should mention is when we got into the game, as you can see, there's the Son Goku Soul Striker leader in his deck. We got into the game and he realized that when importing his deck over from DBS Deck Planet, because the card that he wanted to import over was a skillless, so had the name Son Goku, it had just imported over the Soul Striker Son Goku leader instead. But I said that was fine. He just explained to me it's meant to be the 1-drop black skillless Goku Xeno. And so seeing that in his deck when he comboed that off immediately made me a little bit wary, because I know that now if he gets to turn 4, he might be running some sort of SS4 thwarting package in his deck, and that would make sense if he's also running the Vegeta skillless as well. So I know that I need to pressure his life as much as I can right now, because I need to be making sure that I can kill him before turn 4, or if he goes in for a thwarting on turn 4, I need to make sure that he if he's tapping out for it, then he's going to be dying on the clapback. So here you can see I'm starting to combo aggressively. I'm using my beans to take myself up to that 21k spot, so that even if he has a super combo, it's not going to entirely get him out of the attack. And this is, again, like I was just saying, I need to be applying that pressure because I don't want to get to turn 4 against him anymore, because that's going to... that SS4 Gogeta really puts me on a massive clock. So here I'm swinging with everything, even the blocker that I brought out from my deck. And that's just to keep getting the cards out of his hand so that he doesn't have a hand going into turn 4, and so the SS4 thwarting doesn't become so much of an issue. And then I end up just tapping 1 for another blocker. And I believe that's pretty much all I end up doing this turn. I just end up passing here. I leave this blocker up just in case he has some sort of Arrival shenanigans, because I know that he's charged a Senzu Bean and he's already burnt one. So he probably has at least 1 more bean in his hand, just because he's used them very, like, relaxed in his mannerisms. He was, like, using them in a very relaxed way, just by using 1 on turn 2 and then charging 1 kind of shows that he might have additional copies in his hand for his next turn. So here he's charging another blue-red, and this really surprised me. I thought he'd only want to be charging 1 multicolor on turn 1, but he ended up charging a blue-red this turn anyway, and then discarding a mono-red card for his leader effect. I would have thought that he probably would have done that the other way around just to keep his energy active. But again, that implies to me that he's got an abundance of senzu beans and super combos, so his energy being tapped down doesn't really pose as an issue to him. And then he warped this kettle from his drop that he'd comboed off earlier, and then that's where it started to make sense with the skillless package, because the kettle, you warp it from your drop area and you send from your deck to your drop area 2 skillless cards. So the cards that he sent in question were the skillless Vegetas, and then he already had the skillless Goku from earlier. So he's really set up for this SS4 thwarting play, and he's again used another ape. I believe that's his second ape that he's used to go ahead and refill his hand up, and he still hasn't awakened. So I'm thinking I really need to try and pressure his awaken here, and I'm going to be able to awaken this turn. So that means that I'll have quite a few plays available to me. Because his awaken is going to be an untapped 2, so if I let him awaken during his turn, it's going to give him a lot more of proactive ability along with that SS4 thwarting play, so he won't be entirely tapped out, and I won't potentially be able to kill him on the clapback so easily. So here he used his Beerus super combo and then brings in a Kai, and here we had a little exchange because he's been playing with the Pan secret rare in a bunch of his other decks recently, and so I think he'd gotten confused about between the Kai and the Pan, saying that all of the rest of my battle cards couldn't attack for the turn, but with the Kai it's obviously the leader and the Unison can't attack for the turn instead. So he told me afterwards that he had thought that was a definite misplay on his part, which is fair enough. I mean, they're fairly similar cards, and especially for them both being 8-drop black secret rares, pretty easy to get confused between. And so here I force his awaken because I've got so many 16k attackers. He's definitely going to need to awaken to survive, and he also backs it up with a Senzu Bean, which is really frustrating for me because for anyone who's played or knows anything about the SS4 Towa deck, there's almost no 0-cost 5k combos in the deck because all of the multicolors are counted as 1-cost 5k combos. So being able to combo through that 20k leader is actually going to pose a really big issue for me, and that's why I'm starting to just burn through all of my super combos as offensively as I can here, because I need to get through his hand here. I've at least forced his awaken, and I forced out another bean which I thought he'd had earlier, which is definitely very good in terms of being able to kill him the turn after he drops an SS4 thwarting. But just being able to apply a bit more pressure and take out his hand, like you can see now he's got 4 cards in hand, just because I've been comboing above the 20k mark, and he needs to protect his life here, because if he doesn't survive this turn, then he obviously loses, but as long as he survives this turn, he has the Kai on the board, so he's potentially able to just clear out my entire board, and then that will put us at a very similar hand state, because I've only got 5 cards in hand to his 4 right now. And so he will be in the better position at that point, because as the control deck, if both of you are going even, the slower deck is in a better spot basically, because they're going to hit their late game a lot easier. So I need to stop him hitting that eventual late game, and here I've managed to take him down to 2 life with, I believe it was the blocker attack. And so I end up just swinging in with the double strike Gohan that I brought out off of the Towa, I believe last turn or the turn before. And I just drop as many combos as I can without investing any more energy into it. So I think that ends up just being the SS3 thwarting. And so that leaves me with a couple extra attackers in hand. I have another double strike Gohan that I could potentially go in with. But I end up just passing the turn because he has more cards in hand than me, and I don't really want to invest more cards into his leader because he's just used his 4th Senzu Bean, so he's on 25k base, and so it's really not worth me investing 2 cards and 2 energy every time I attack just to try and send a damage through to him, because he'd just be easily able to combo out, and then I'd be down 2 more cards than he would every time. But I end up just passing turn because I need to make sure that I can kill him after he's used all his Senzu Beans, and so I need to keep my hand size fairly healthy, and then he uses the Kai effect to warp my entire board, and I draw a card off my leader effect, Now, a couple of good things to note here is because he had to use that Kai effect, it means he's not dropping an SS4 thwarting on me, and that means he's not able to pressure my hand, my board, or my life with that. So that would kind of put him in a tricky spot where he had to use the Kai effect if he wanted to survive, because he probably needs some energy open going into my next turn as well to negate and use some super combos and stuff, or some arrival plays, sorry. But also, now that he's on his awakened side, he's not going to be able to get the draw power that he had on the front side anymore, because his leader on the back side doesn't actually draw any cards. And so he's kind of stuck with the hand size that he has right now, and he's also burnt through all the apes in his drop area, and that's the reason why he took a life with his Whist that he dropped during his last turn, I believe, was he just took the life because he knew that he needed to get it to his hand, because otherwise I was going to double strike him for game. And as you can see here, I've got 2 of the Gohan double strikers, so I go in with each of those. Even though he's only on 1 life, it's better to keep the other 2 cards in my hand, the Bardock and the other Gohan, because they have more flexibility. The Bardock can be used as a counterplay in case he cooler arrivals, and the Gohan can be used as a negate in case I need it. But he combos out of that attack pretty nicely, and he did have the SS4 thwarting in his hand, so I managed to play around that fairly well. And then I just tap 1 for the Gohan negate, and that's going to be game because the last card in his hand was a 10k combo, and he didn't have any energy open to use it. So here I did have somewhat of a side deck prepared. It wasn't like very well thought out or put together. I've never been one for like properly thinking out a side deck and putting it together, especially with these online events, just because I prefer to just kind of take one deck and not have to think about siding in and out stuff. But also I don't have access to a lot of the cards that I would use in a side deck, so I just don't really consider the cards that I don't have access to, even when it comes to building decks online. But this deck was, this side deck was definitely one of my better ones. I think I had like some of the 1-drop Vegetas that can force your opponent to warp cards from their hand every time they untap energy, or something like that, I can't remember. And I think I also had some SS4 thwartings in the side, but I didn't end up siding those in. But going into the next game, I basically want to be doing the same thing that I was doing last game, pressuring him into his turn 4 to make it very tricky for him to drop an SS4 thwarting, and making sure that if he does drop that SS4 thwarting, I'm able to either kill him on the clapback, or he doesn't have any sort of hand size, so I'm able to outlast him in that sense, as long as he's awakened. So here, going into my turn, I again have a nice blue charge to get my Senzu Beans going if I need them later on. But the only issue with this opening hand is I obviously don't have the SS4 Vegeta that every SS4 Towa deck is looking for at every point in the game, really. So I don't have really a solid turn 1 play, because I want to hold the Bardock in my hand as well as that Gohan to give me some counter plays and counter attacks in case he gets any sort of board going, or in case he tries to establish some arrival plays. And so here he swings into my leader, and I just take the life. Like I've mentioned before, I want to be killing him before turn 4 if possible, or at least pressuring him enough so that it's tricky for him to drop a thwarting on turn 4. And so me taking life in the early game is really not something I'm worried about. And in fact, if anything, it more helps me than hurts me, because it means that I'll be allowed to awaken quicker. And so I think that was potentially a slight misplay on his part. I don't think he really needed to be attacking into my leader at that point, because him attacking with the red Beerus leader doesn't give him any sort of advantage, because his draw is tied to an activate main rather than on attack auto. But the advantage to going second in this game is that I do have access to this promo Towa now, going on to my turn 2. Whereas last game, because I went first, I was only able to use it on turn 3. Because he didn't have enough energy for me to use it. It requires your opponent to have 2 or less energy, or 2 or more energy, sorry. And so here I just crit the life from the Towa. I forgot to do that before playing out the guys, but we just fixed it afterwards because it wasn't a massive issue to fix. And that puts me at 4 life, so I'm now able to awaken, and that gives me some extra energy to play with. And as you can see, my hand right now is really strong. I finally seen my SS4 Vegeta, so I'm able to get some critical attackers going. I see a Dark Dragon Ball, so I just use it to grab another Vegeta. And I've got another copy of Bean. I believe I already casted one Bean this turn. I'm not sure, I wasn't entirely paying attention to that. But I've got another Bean just in case. And I also have the Trunks Overwhelm in my hand. This is one of the overwhelms of choice in the deck that I've got, just because it allows for more filtering, and you've got a couple of different nice, neat interactions in this deck that really benefit from generic filtering cards, like the SS4 Vegeta or the Trunks Time Regulator. So here he tries to arrival the Beerus that I was talking about earlier. But luckily, it's a 20k just the same as the 5-drop arrival cooler is, so I'm able to counterplay it with the Bardock, and he's now tapped out, and I have a bunch more swings. And then I overwhelm into the 3-drop Trunks, and so I have 3 more potential swings. I might keep the Goku active, just to keep a block alive going into his next turn, because I'm now on 4 life, and I've now awakened, so I don't particularly want to take more life. And he can definitely start to pressure me if he wants to at this point. So I end up leaving the block alive just in case he's able to have some strong arrival shenanigans like last game with Senzu Beans and stuff. But unlike last game, going into his next turn, I do have 1 energy available to me. And that is going to be helpful because it means that if he does have those arrival shenanigans, he's then going to be stopped by the SS4 Bardock in my hand. If some of those arrival shenanigans involve the 5-drop cooler arrival or the 4-drop Beerus arrival. Here he used, I believe it was a Whis. I think he might have taken his own life there. I'm not entirely sure. I don't know how he went down to 2 life, or maybe I think his Whis rested my Goku by taking a life or something. I'm not entirely sure what that Whis does, but I believe he took his own life with it somehow. But he ends up swinging his leader into... I can't remember where he swung into, but it doesn't matter because I end up negating it. I believe at the time of recording, I thought that this Gohan required you to discard just to get the negate off, but I'm pretty sure now that you don't actually have to discard, and you only have to discard to activate the floodgate effect. So this was a minor misplay on my part if that is the case. Because I don't want to be getting the floodgate effect against his deck, because he's got 3 colors in his energy, so it's not really relevant to be using against him. But also because he's a control deck, and I've negated his attack when he's mostly going to be using or playing cards through a rival. He's not going to be playing any more battle cards to put pressure onto me, really. So I really didn't need to discard that card. I just thought that I had to get the first negate off. But the main reason I negated that attack was so that he didn't have any attacks that he could use cards to arrival in. And it kind of just shuts down his turn there and spins it straight back to my turn, where I'm able to keep applying the pressure, keep pushing down the gas. And now because I'm on 4 or less life, and because he's suddenly very low on life, I'm able to start aggressively comboing in as well. And this, backed up by the Bardock counterplay in my hand, means that I'm going to be safe from any sort of scary arrival plays, unless he arrivals in the 25k big cooler. But if he does that, that's going to cost him 3 total energy to arrival, as well as whatever comboing any cards might cost him as well. So here, like I was just saying, he tries to arrival in his cheaper cooler, and I end up just counterplaying it with the Bardock, like I was planning on doing. And then he has a Senzu Bean, which is going to stave off a lot of my aggression this turn if he decides to awaken. And this turn I was just trying to pressure him into awakening and trying to chip away at his hand so that he's not able to awaken and drop an SS4 thwarting on me in the same turn. But he ends up holding his awaken for a really long time this turn, and I think that could have been a slight misplay on his part, because whilst having the awaken active on your turn in Beerus is a very, very strong asset to you, I feel like it was a very greedy play on his part. Just looking at my board and the fact that I still have 2 energy open and 6 cards in hand, I'm going to be able to apply a lot of pressure this turn, and so I feel like he definitely could have done with Awakening a little bit earlier than he ended up doing. But also I have 2 copies of Senzu Bean in my hand, so I'm able to push quite a lot here. And even though he's got his 1 copy of Senzu Bean active at the moment, I'm going to be able to keep pushing through it, because currently his lead is only 15k base. And I also have Senzu Bean and some actual 5k combos in my hand that I can keep pressuring even if he does end up Awakening early. But he's done some strong arrival plays here. He's burnt a super combo to arrival in his Hercule Boo, and he also brought in the Cooler. And he was using these minuses on his arrival plays not to actually kill my battle cards, but instead to just make sure that none of them could get into the leader. Just by making all of them 6k rather than 16k. And while this is definitely a strong play, I feel like, again, if he just Awakened and then being able to keep up his hand advantage rather than bleeding out combos when I was attacking him, I feel like that could have been a better play on his part, just because it would have meant that all of my battle cards couldn't swing into him, whether they were minused or not, and then it would mean that he could start dealing with my board with the minuses and start clearing out all of my battle cards going into his turn 4, which would then mean that he could start applying pressure onto my leader with any sort of board that he had going into his turn 4 from his arrival plays, but also with the SS4 thwarting if he has it in his hand. So I feel like if he'd Awakened a little bit earlier and just taken his leader to a 20k base so that he didn't have to bleed out all of these combo powers from his hand, I feel like that could have maybe potentially been a stronger play on his part. But then again, I definitely understand, because having the Beerus Awaken live during your own turn is very strong, because it effectively gives you access to the draw 2 effect on his front side as well as the untap 2 effect on his Awaken skill. So here, because he's at 2 life, I've just been swinging with everything I can to try and whittle down his hand, and then as soon as I have the ability, I just overwhelm 6 into the SS3 thwarting to go for a massive double strike on his leader. And I believe I warped out his Cooler when I attacked with it as well. And I think that this in total combos up to 40k double strike on his leader. I potentially could have comboed in 5k more because I had 1 energy open, so I could have comboed off another 1 cost 5k. But I decided it would probably be safe just to hold the energy for the negate in my hand. And even if he's able to out-combo this, which he is, it's going to take him a lot of his resources, because he only had 2 cards in hand and the Hercule Boo on board at this point. So it costs him everything in his hand alongside the Hercule Boo on his board. And here I just swing with, I believe the Bardock, or, oh no, I think I swung with my leader here. Just to take him down to 1 life, and now I'm swinging with, I think, the Gohan, just to take the last card out of his hand that he got from his life, and then swinging, this is where I'm debating tapping 1 to bring in the negate, just to force his Awaken out now, so that he doesn't have access to Awaken going into his next turn. And as you can see, I'm checking his drop area here, and he has 2 of the Bardock apes in his drop, so that means that going into his next turn, he could tap 2 to draw 2, and then untap the 2 from his Awaken skill. So I decided it's definitely worth just forcing out his Awaken here, and then I can just pass turn and he's stuck with nothing in his hand. Here he accidentally drew 2 cards. I think he was, I think we were talking about it in the voice call at the time, but he had thought that the Awaken was an untap 2 draw 2, or he'd been reading the activate main, and so he saw the draw 2 part on the activate main and just instinctively drew 2 when Awakening or something like that. But we just ended up, I just let him put the cards back, and I think he shuffled the deck or something. But now going into his next turn, I'm obviously in a very strong spot. He's got only 1 card in hand, and I forced his Awaken out. I feel like on my kill turn, I could have maybe comboed a little bit better to actually kill him with a double striker. I don't remember if the Gohan double striker on my board currently was brought out from the Towa that turn or not. Because if it wasn't, then it would have had double strike live, and I could have probably killed him that turn just by following up the thwarting attack with the Gohan attack as well, and comboing in with that. But regardless, he's on a very low number of cards in hand, and because of that he's not able to charge because he needs to keep the cards in his hand. But that also means that he's not going to be able to drop a thwarting on me, which is the main card that I'm fearful of, because if he drops a thwarting on me and swings with his leader, he might be able to actually turn this game around. But as you can see, he doesn't have, well, he wasn't able to charge like I just said, but he doesn't have the thwarting in his, or he didn't have the thwarting in his hand and the energy that he needed to play it. So he's just drawing a bunch of cards off of the Bardock and then passes over to me. I end up taking the life from his leader swing as well, just to get some more cards in my hand, and also because I don't think I was actually able to combo out of it because I was tapped out with only 1 cost 5Ks. But as you can see, this game is like very, very over because I've just got a massive board and he's got nothing in hand or on board, and I even have Fighting Against Fates to follow up my massive board with. So that was basically the end of the game and the end of that best of 3 match. So that does actually put me into the semi-finals or the finals of the losers bracket, where I'll be pitted against Johnny, aka Turn to Stone, who, if you remember from, I believe I mentioned it in the first episode of this tournament series, but we were actually able to invite 2 other members or 2 other friends of ours to participate in the tournament with us, alongside us, to represent our YouTube channels or our teams or whatever you want to call it, really. But Johnny was actually one of the 2 people that I had invited to represent Big O Notation, and so in the final round of the losers bracket I was facing off against him. And if you guys are interested in that, definitely stay tuned. It features some very, very interesting decks, and some decks I'm very excited to profile, along with this SS4 Towa deck profile. So if you guys are interested in any of that stuff, definitely stay tuned. Thank you guys so much for watching, and as always, I'll catch you in the next video.